Thanks so much, Benedict, and thanks everyone for joining us today. So, like you'd mentioned earlier, before we begin, I think it's important for me to take the time to acknowledge whose land and territory we're on today in Manitoba, especially because myself, I'm a settler to these lands, and because Clinic, the organization that I work for, is situated on Indigenous land. So Winnipeg and the surrounding area is Cree or Innu and Ojibwe or Anishinaabe traditional territory. We're also in the heart and homeland of the Métis Nation. So now that Canada exists, we're all part of Treaty Number 1 territory. So I want to reflect on how grateful we are to live and work and learn on this land. And I'm really grateful to be here today and to learn with you. So thanks again for all of you joining us. So as Benedict mentioned, I'm a clinician in the sexual assault crisis program at Clinic. So today I'll share a little bit about just kind of the way we work in terms of responding to sexual assault, the way we talk about it as a continuum in a really trauma-informed way, and how that kind of informs the way we connect with survivors. So at the end of our presentation, I'll talk a little bit about what services are available at Clinic through the SAT program, but I'll start by just sharing kind of a lens that we use around the work that kind of informs our definition and how we work in a pretty specific way. So when we talk about what is sexual assault, for our purposes, we're using more of a trauma-informed definition, which might capture, different experiences that doesn't translate exactly to the same way that systems might be able to capture certain experiences. So what we're really focused on is the way that someone experiences and internalizes the event rather than the details of the event itself. So what that means is when we're looking at what is sexual assault and what does that encompass and who are we supporting, we're really referring to any unwanted sexual contact. So that can include touch, but it doesn't have to. So when I go back to systems, for example, when we talk about this umbrella way of talking about sexual assault, we would really look at sexual violence as kind of the overarching category, and within that would be sexual assault, sexual harassment, sexual abuse, anything that's unwanted and doesn't include kind of enthusiastic consent that's present ongoing. So that's the way that we really talk about sexual assault, and we can support clients, for multiple sessions and still not know the details of the event itself, but rather just focus on their experience of it, and knowing that all degrees of sexual assault, all experiences of sexual assault, anything that's unwanted, can and does elicit the same, sexual assault trauma responses. Our heart, our brain, our bodies, our spirits can really react with these sexual assault trauma responses in a way that's not determined by the behavior or the event, the details of the event itself that someone experienced. So that's going to include a wide range of behaviors, unwanted kissing, touching, gestures, and of course verbal as well. So what we look at within our lens is this way of working that says all forms of sexual assault are serious. So there's no hierarchy of which one is worse or can cause the most traumatic responses for someone. So looking at our lens in particular, we're really kind of rooted in this empowerment model or this feminist model perspective, which posits the survivor as the person who lived this experience and is therefore the expert on it. So what we're really doing is meeting people where they're at and kind of helping them unpack what it is that they need as an individual, and really acknowledging, the personal kind of factors that come with that, and there's no one size fits all. So what that empowerment model does is says, what we might need or what we might want for that survivor could be incredibly different than what they need or what they might want for themselves. So it's kind of letting go of those biases and then meeting folks where they're at in a way that says there's no right or wrong next step, which again translates to never kind of encouraging or discouraging a certain next step, but walking alongside someone and helping them unpack what's going to feel like the best fit for them as an individual, bringing everything that they bring to a session or a decision. So what we want to try to do when we're meeting with folks and when we're talking with folks and even talking about how to be a compassionate responder when we're hearing this as community members, is really about acknowledging this was an instance where power, choice, control was taken away. And we want to do everything that we can to give power, choice, and control back as an intervention in of itself. So that brings us to the trauma-informed lens that really acknowledges this is likely someone who's experienced a traumatic victimization, and how do we help them heal, knowing that there's no one way a survivor will present, or there's no one set of things a survivor might need. Strength-based really means that we're acknowledging those internal resources that a survivor is bringing. Pro-choice, again, really kind of at the center of the work and the center of the response to a disclosure is acknowledging that, we want to find ways to give an individual as much control over the next steps of this process. And we're not the only show in town, right? This is just one option. Counseling is one of the choices available to folks, but it's certainly not the only choice. So kind of respecting the survivor's choices and in terms of being trauma-informed and pro-choice, having this priority around informed choice. So people really know what they're saying yes to when we're talking about what's available in terms of moving forward and what they might find meaningful or healing. Again, client-centered is honoring what that client wants and really meeting people where they're at and kind of acknowledging that that might organically show up as we begin the work together. And of course, being really culturally sensitive, prioritizing multicultural competencies in our work, and this holistic kind of biopsychosocial spiritual model that we use is really looking at, this is something that can impact a person in their entirety. So knowing that a lot of the work we might find ourselves doing is, how is this experience touching different parts of their lives as whole people? And then finding ways to meet needs in that same model. So looking at a trauma definition. So what is trauma when we're talking about trauma in this context? It's really referring to experiences or events that by definition are out of the ordinary in terms of their overwhelming nature. So they're more than just merely stressful, which can sometimes be an interchangeable word we hear used when talking about trauma, but they're kind of beyond that. So they're also shocking, terrifying, and devastating to the victim, usually resulting in profoundly upsetting feelings of terror, shame, helplessness, and powerlessness. So you can imagine how that experience translates to what someone might be coping with following a sexual assault. So the stressors can be severe. However, trauma is often a threat to life or limb, or the perceived threat of that. So you can start to think about how that kind of connects to someone's experience of a traumatic event, regardless if there's touch or not. It's really the internalization of what that really scary experience felt for them. So in a broad sense, it can extend from threat of body to threat of sense of self. And that's often a lot of what the conversations we find ourselves having with clients is really centered on. When we think about trauma responses and how we can normalize that for folks, one of the most common kind of fight, flight, or freeze responses experienced with sexual assault is often freeze. So that can help us make sense and normalize, well, why didn't I say no? Why didn't I ask for help? Why didn't I leave? Perhaps because your body was doing what it's designed to do in terms of what's available in the moment, and usually that's freeze. So anything that helps someone survive a sexual assault, we would frame as a success or something smart that their body did and was evolved to do to help them kind of feel safe and survive that moment. So when we look at sexual assault trauma in particular and talk about it in this way, we're really talking about these 5 basic human needs that are really impeded against. And Babette Rothschild is a trauma researcher, and she does a lot of work in this area and kind of talks about it in these 5 categories. So when we think about a sexual assault trauma, they can really fit with the kinds of life areas that people are going to be noticing the impacts within. So that need to be safe, the need to trust. And when we think about how often the person who has hurt us in this way is a known person, that can be really complicated and really damaging to someone's sense of trust. The need to feel some control. So again, this is a traumatic victimization that often includes this experience of a sense of control and choice being taken away. So giving that back while acknowledging that the really human need to feel control has been broken. The need to value yourself and others, and the need to feel close to others. So again, knowing that so many of the people who have used sexual violence are known to us, these two can really complicate, how we make sense of this, how we internalize, victim blaming culture, how we shift that message around, whose job was it to prevent this from happening. So when we look at the factors influencing the degree of trauma experienced, it's important to note that it can kind of look like a few different things. So support, previous life experiences, coping that someone has available to them, maybe coping that they've learned that has been helpful, overcoming other life events, and again, the identity of the assailant. So if this is someone that is a known person to the survivor, that might impact how safe they feel reaching out, the way they make sense of do I get to name this as sexual assault? And then the cultural and societal context. So the societal context for us really shows up with these myths that exist around sexual violence and the internalization of those. So when we look at the research around some of the factors that really help people feel safe moving forward, it's about being aware of these things, being aware of the myths, being a critical thinker around how those myths can be damaging, and then responding in an unbiased, non-judgmental way. So we know that the first time someone discloses can actually be really impactful in if a survivor feels safe moving forward. So I'm just going to move quickly into the impact of sexual assault and really summarize in a way that just normalizes sexual assault trauma can touch a variety of life areas. And we want to just kind of be mindful that there's no hierarchy of impact, that these sexual assault trauma responses are all serious, and that we get to validate and take all of them really seriously. And knowing that someone making sense of this experience might be minimizing and might be making sense of this alongside our work. So this is not an exhaustive list. It's just one way to think about, how does this potentially touch someone's life in multiple areas? So looking at the physical, the behavioral, the emotional, the cognitive, and knowing that these responses might overlap and affect each other and kind of blend into multiple life areas for someone. So those physical reactions, they might be seen initially at the hospital following a traumatic event. There are also these physical reactions that can come with sexual assault trauma that are really normal and common, but might be internalized as something else going on and are happening down the road, so months or years. And you can see the list here that lists physical trauma and then the psychophysical trauma responses that can carry on. So sometimes folks are unsure, why am I having trouble sleeping? Why am I having trouble concentrating? And we want to be able to normalize the connection that they make between what happened and what's going on in their body. And then moving into behavioral reactions, there's no one way that this will look, and there's no one way that a survivor is going to experience the sexual assault trauma responses, but knowing that these could all be included in addition to other things that could make their way onto this list. One of the things that we encourage folks to kind of notice and be gentle with themselves around is any kind of shift in their behavior. So hypervigilance, for example, if they're becoming easily startled where they weren't before, if they're having a different relationship with food, for example, or eating habits, if they're taking more risks when usually that would be kind of feeling out of character. We really want to just normalize the shift. And sometimes what we hear from folks is, I'm really not feeling myself. How is that connected? So looking at emotional reactions, you really could find any kind of human emotion on this list. And what we want to support folks in doing is normalizing, the extent of that, and helping folks be kind with themselves around the diverse emotions that might show up. Some that are really common in the work that we've seen are, of course, shame, a sense of guilt, the internalized victim blaming, and kind of the protective piece around making sense of this that really shows up as significant self-blame for someone. We hear a lot of sadness and anger. Sometimes this work can be quite comparable to grief work. So that can be a helpful analogy for folks, but just knowing that, there's no one way a survivor looks or will present or will kind of feel as they're moving through their healing in the different stages of that, and just kind of creating space for all of these to be normal, and to be able to honor whatever is coming up for someone. Moving into cognitive reactions, a lot of what we see and want to normalize is kind of this shift in sense of self, sense of safety, making sense of how I see the world. Sometimes this can really feel existential, conversations around when do I feel safe, conversations around suffering, and meaning making, and that can be quite jarring or quite new for folks. Sometimes what we see here in this category, and of course this can also extend to physical and emotional and other parts of people's lives, but flashbacks and nightmares, intrusive thoughts, those are really normal, and we want to find ways to support people in feeling safe if and when that happens. And moving on to kind of knowing that that's the way that we work, who would you refer to? So SAP services are predominantly available in the city if we're talking about the in-person piece. And then we do have a sexual assault crisis line that's also available for folks toll-free. So that's a 24/7 sexual assault crisis line available for individuals who've experienced sexual violence and also secondary survivors, so loved ones who perhaps are supporting someone in their life through this. We get information requests on that line. We get questions about third-party reporting on that line, and you're able to usually it will be answered by a woman, but you're also able to request a woman on that line as well. So the folks in that program are trained in sexual assault trauma and the lenses that I was talking about. The other piece that's available is this advocacy and medical legal appointment support. So we can attend hospital or any follow-up medical legal appointments if that's something the client identifies as being helpful for them. So we're a supportive presence, and sometimes that looks like advocacy within systems and navigating different systems and different choices. If someone is getting STI results, for example, or they have a preliminary court hearing set, those are the kinds of requests that if they want a supportive presence, SAP can attend, and that's all no cost and self-referral. And then the last piece I want to share with you is the availability to do in-person, short-term, and again, trauma-informed counseling through the SAT program. So that is also available for survivors in addition to secondary survivors. So kind of in summary, we have a team of volunteers. We're available for support and advocacy. We have this 24/7, no-cost telephone line available for folks. And then we do public education and awareness like this, and are available for any service providers who want to talk more about responding to disclosures. So thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to the rest of the presentations and any questions that follow.
Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Amanda Thiessen, and I am a victim services worker for Manitoba Justice in the Domestic Violence Unit. I'm so honored to have the chance to share a little bit about the victim services program here in Manitoba. So to give you a brief overview, our victim services program, specifically here in Winnipeg, is divided up into separate units. We have a Victims Bill of Rights unit, which works with victims of the most serious crimes designated by the Victims Bill of Rights. So just as an example, this unit works with surviving family members of fatalities, sexual assault survivors that are not in a domestic context, and so on. The list of offenses is quite extensive. Our program also has a domestic violence unit, which I work in. So we work specifically with victims of domestic violence crimes, including sexual assault survivors that do fall within a domestic context. The child victim unit works predominantly with children, but they also work with adult survivors of sexual abuse that have come forward later in life. We have 2 designated staff members that work specifically with families of murdered and missing Indigenous persons. And finally, our office also supports individuals who fall under the Canadian Victims Bill of Rights. So that would essentially involve any offense that might not fit into one of the designated programs. And then not mentioned on this slide, but important to know, and I will certainly talk about this a little bit more later, is that we also have a compensation for victims of crime program. So the goal of victim services ultimately is to be a source of support for anyone involved in the criminal justice system, including anyone interested in information about how the system itself works before ever becoming involved. So we have workers that operate out of communities all over the province. So our goal is to be accessible to all Manitobans, no matter where they might live. Victim services acts as a central point of contact for people to get information about the status of their case, if they've gone to police and charges have been laid. We're also available to talk to anybody that may be considering going to the police to report a sexual assault that happened to them, but maybe they're wanting an idea of what the specific experience would look like beforehand. So a worker can explain the process of contacting police and what the process looks like from there. We can also give the individual an idea of what the court process would actually look like should their matter proceed to that point. So ultimately, our goal is to give people as much information as possible so they feel like they have enough to really make an informed decision. And so another thing to know too is victim services will connect people to, community agencies and resources where we can. So some of the specific ways a victim services worker can assist a sexual assault survivor are through providing information, court preparation, and offering access to counseling and referrals. So under the information component, our workers provide a lot of general information about how the court system works, what the criminal justice system looks like. So, for example, we can explain, what the role of a Crown attorney is. We can give information about court dates and other updates that are relevant to that individual's case. We can explain the process of completing a victim impact statement and directly assist people in doing that. We provide information to people about the custody status of the offender and whether they've been released from jail or not. We can also assist people in registering with the Parole Board of Canada to get information about offenders that have been sentenced to 2 or more years of jail time. In terms of court preparation, victim services can help prepare people for the court experience. So this would include helping them to prepare for testifying, which could also mean going to the courtroom beforehand. We can explain how a subpoena works and can assist people with getting to court, whether that means helping with transportation or parking and covering the funds for that. Victim services workers often accompany individuals to Crown attorney meetings where often further court preparation is completed. And with counseling and referrals, we will always encourage individuals to take advantage of our compensation program, specifically to access counseling. We'll also refer to other appropriate community agencies and resources that might be a good fit for that person, and especially in domestic violence circumstances. But of course, in any fitting situation, our workers can help an individual to create an ongoing safety plan as well. So folks in Manitoba have a number of options available to them when deciding what they want to do, if anything, after experiencing sexual assault. And again, Victim Services is a contact point for people to get in touch with if they want to discuss these options and learn more specifically about what the criminal justice system looks like should they decide to go with that option. So people can do all, some, or of course none of these options. So people can receive medical care without reporting to police, for example, or they can do both. They can make a complaint through third-party reporting, through their post-secondary institution, to the Manitoba Human Rights Code and Sexual Harassment Body. They can report to their regulated professional body or go the route of civil court. And again, Victim Services will always recommend that any individual who's experienced sexual assault get connected with counseling, and we will offer ongoing support whenever we can, especially through the court system. So some information here about what the court process itself looks like, and this information that we would is information that we would provide to anyone that we work with. So if a report is made about a sexual assault and the police decide to lay charges, police will then give that file to the Crown Attorney, sometimes also called the Crown, and they are the lawyer who will try to prove the case in court. So Crown attorneys are lawyers that work for the Department of Justice, and their job is to assess cases and ultimately prosecute them in court. Crown attorneys are making assessments about each of their cases in an ongoing manner, and they make all decisions about that case, including whether charges will proceed or ultimately be dropped. An important piece of information to know is that the Crown is not any individual's personal lawyer, but they do absolutely consider the concerns of the survivor about the case when making their decisions. It's also important to understand that if criminal cases go forward on behalf of the it's important to understand that criminal cases go forward on behalf of the public, so they're not private proceedings. So technically, the survivor is considered to be a witness in the case. So they do not need to hire a lawyer for representation during the proceedings. And again, Victim Services is sort of there to advocate for them in the whole process. One of the number one things that we want people to know is that they deserve to feel safe, whether or not they report what happened to them. So part of any victim service worker's job is to help an individual create a safety plan that works for them. So this could include helping someone to apply for a court order, such as a peace bond or a protection order in situations specifically where a person maybe hasn't gone to police to make a report. And just to explain briefly that if charges are laid, a court order of no contact and no communication by the accused person is automatically put into place. And so this is our sweet Milan. Milan is Manitoba's first and only accredited facility dog. She is a very calming and comforting effect on everyone that she interacts with. So since starting work with Victim Services on July 11th of 2016, Milan has participated in over 100 meetings with victims, primarily children, but also adults as well. She's been in both Queen's Bench and provincial court over 50 times, acting in a supportive capacity alongside victims as they testify. And she was trained by the Pacific Assistance Dog Society for 2 years prior to coming over to us. And so getting back to our compensation for victims of crime program. So this program helps victims who've suffered personal injury, hardships, or expenses because of certain crimes, including sexual assault, by providing support and services, which includes helping to pay for counseling. So in order to apply for benefits, the person who committed the crime does not need to have been caught, but a report does have to have been made to police. And another thing to know is that people can access the program to help pay for counseling if they've completed a third-party report on sexual assault. So this is just an example of some of the expenses that the compensation program may assist in covering. The key thing to know here is that the program will cover reasonable expenses that are not already covered by another source, for example, insurance. So, for example, the program covers expenses like ambulance bills, replacement of damaged clothing, dental treatment, damaged eyeglasses, counseling and therapy, as well as lost wages. One of the main things victim services can assist someone with is completing a victim impact statement. So this slide includes some of the key things to know about victim impact statements in general. So most notably, they are totally voluntary. So involved individuals do not have to complete one if they don't want to. Another thing to know is that the victim impact statement can only be presented to the court if the accused person has been found guilty or if they've pled guilty. So the statement is presented at the sentencing. And there's a few options around how the statement is presented to the court. So the victim can read the statement themselves, have the Crown read it for them, or they can have it filed with the court. And also, the victim does not have to be in attendance at the sentencing if they don't want to be there. The statement itself provides the victim with an opportunity to outline how the crime affected them emotionally, physically, and to describe possible financial harm that was experienced by them. And there's even a space for drawing or writing a poem or a letter. Another important thing to know about the victim impact statement is that they're disclosed to the accused person's defense lawyer as well as the judge. So the key thing there is that they are not private. So Manitoba Victim Services is currently working on delivering training, information, and education on the topic of sexual violence. So the goal of this project has been to help Manitobans become better informed about sexual assault and how best to support survivors. So a big part of this program was creating this booklet. You see a picture of it there on the left of the screen. You have options, help after a sexual assault. So this booklet is available on the Government of Manitoba website, and the link is, I believe, posted below. If you'd like to take a further look. And so that covers everything for me. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen, and I look forward to answering any questions about the program after the webinar.
And that brings us to me. Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine. I am a social worker with A&O Support Services for Older Adults, specifically targeting today the Older Victim Services Program. So as a bit of an intro, I am going to present just a basic agenda. So we're going to talk about A&O in general, a little bit about the Older Victim Services Program itself, and then looking at some case examples as to what types of services and supports we might be able to provide to someone. So our mission is to offer specialized programs and services throughout Manitoba that support and enhance the spiritual and all levels of an older adult's life and actively promote their participation in all aspects of their community life. And the vision, nice and short, is to develop and deliver innovative programs and services that improve the quality of later life. The agency itself, community-based not-for-profit organization specializing in working with individuals who are over the age of 55. We've been around for some time now, established in 1957, and we're governed by a volunteer board of directors. So about our services, we actually offer a large number of services across a number of different types of needs. Today, we're going to talk about the first pillar being that of safety and security. So all of our programs and services are provided at no cost. There's one exception that's related to legal services, but I'll talk a little bit about that later. So what's great about our programs and services is that clients that are connected through one program could actually become involved in each and every one of them. Also, once a client is connected to a social worker in one of these programs, they're able to build that relationship and maintain that relationship throughout their involvement, no matter which programs they might be connected with. So some of our statistics in the 2017-2018 year, ANO assisted over 31,000 Manitobans ranging in age from 55 to 103. Of those cases, 6 were reported sexual assault cases through the Winnipeg Police or Victim Services Unit. And the Older Victim Services program itself received over 40 that involved elder abuse. And elder abuse cases involving sexual assault, we received 9 in that same year. Our Safe Suite program, currently, as of this date, has housed 4 individuals who reported experiencing sexual abuse. And sadly, in all cases, the victim has identified as being female. Of course, this may with the fact that as females, we tend to outlive the males in our lives. So these are some very scary statistics when you think about the fact that it's estimated that only 1 in 5 cases of abuse against older adults ever comes to the attention of those who can help. So these numbers might be a great deal higher. We did try to upload a video from YouTube describing an incident of elder sexual assault. This particular video is a video of a person who was sexually assaulted in Australia. It's a news footage video. The person experiencing the sexual assault was an 84-year-old woman, and she was assaulted by a male caregiver. She was in respite at the time, and the video does a very good job of giving voice to the older adult who experienced the assault, and also to how the entire family is affected on the whole. This particular video also showcases another incident where a woman in her 70s was attacked and assaulted in her car. Unfortunately, we're not able to show the video, but the link is there. So I'd encourage you to view that video. It's very interesting. So the Older Victim Services program is one of the programs of A&O. So what we do within that program, much of the same types of supports that Amanda just spoke about within the Manitoba Justice Victim Services Unit. So providing a great deal of support and information. And actually the program started in 1983 through a partnership with the Winnipeg Police Service and Victim Witness Assistance Program, recognizing the specific unique needs of older adults who become the victim of a crime. And as far as we know, at this point, we're the only program of its kind. So we receive direct referrals from the Winnipeg Police Victim Services section for older adults who are over the age of 60. We also receive referrals from Victim Witness Assistance Program, Crown Attorneys, the Office of Prosecutors, as well as self and community referrals through our intake line. The Older Victim Service Program receives referrals reflecting a variety of police-reported sexual assault incidents. So that could be incidents involving stranger violence, dementia-related incidents where perhaps the victim or the perpetrator may not completely understand or remember exactly what has happened, and assaults by individuals with dementia, possibly believing they're in a consenting relationship, incidents of interpersonal violence, which we call elder abuse, which is abuse by a person in a position of trust. So examples might be friends, family members, care providers, whether they be in hospital or in a personal care environment. So what's important to note as well is that most of the research around crime victimization especially related to those experiencing sexual violence or abuse, is centered on the experiences of those under the age of 49. Older adults are often invisible when it comes to research related to sex and or sexual violence, which leads to a lack of funding to provide education around sexual health, resources, and programming for elder women. So the Older Victim Services program, through partnership with the Winnipeg Police Service and Victim Witness Assistance, is able to provide very similar supports to the Manitoba Justice Victim Services programs. So a great deal of the service that we provide is letting people know that it doesn't, court involvement doesn't happen like it does on TV, and giving them a real sense of what they can expect. Talking to them about some of the challenges that they might be fearful of experiencing within the courts and how to overcome those. Also talking with them a great deal about their role and their rights as a victim of crime. A great deal of assistance understanding how the criminal justice system works, how they're able to gain access to supports related to completion of victim impact statements and compensation for victims of crime applications, especially for those individuals who potentially have issues with manual dexterity and perhaps are not able to complete them on their own, or a variety of other health or perhaps even mental health issues. We assist with court updates, court tours. We help connect them with transportation, interpreters if they're needed, and we also do go to court with these individuals. So the Older Victim Service Program is unique in my personal opinion, because it's able to combine 61 years of excellence in providing programs and services to older adults in the Winnipeg area, with the range of services offered within Manitoba Justice. What's distinctive to the Older Victim Service Program is that built into the service is an innate understanding and ability to acknowledge and respect the lived experiences and needs of older adults as a whole. The result is a program that acknowledges and respects those needs and circumstances for those who become victims of crime, as well as their family members. Supports are provided whether or not police are ever involved and whether or not charges are ever laid, as well as at any point before, during, or after the court process. Supports may include the individual, their family, as well as formal and informal. And the older adult is able to access supports that are proactive and reactive within the same organization and supported by the same social worker. So they're not having to build new relationships every step of the way. As we age, there may be significant differences in how we experience and cope with the impacts of crime victimization. Therefore, there may also be differences in the ways in which victim service programs need to respond to these experiences. Statistics from the 2016 Canadian Census says that adults, then children, are present in Canada for the first time in history, with an expected increase of 25% of the total population by 2036. Given that statistic, it's very important that we look at how ages impacts or may impact the experience of older adults who become victims of crime. So we define ageism, according to Wikipedia, as the underlying assumptions that affect the types of offenses committed by adults. Ageism and its underlying assumptions affect the types of offenses committed against older adults, how they see themselves, and the supports that are available to them in their communities. So Wikipedia defines it as the stereotyping of and discrimination against individuals or groups on the basis of their age. This may be casual or systemic, and the term to describe that discrimination against older adults connects three elements: prejudicial attitudes toward older people, old age, and the aging process. It may lead to the denial of certain rights, the ignoring of their thoughts, ideas, and opinions, as well as the assumption that they should behave in certain ways because of their age. Older people themselves can be deeply ageist, having internalized a lifetime of negative stereotypes about aging. Again, older adults are often invisible when it comes to research and services related to sex and/or sexual violence, which leads to a lack of understanding and funding to provide education, sexual health, resources, and programming. So what ageism also leads to is a social denial that older adults can experience a sexual assault. That can also lead to a decreased reporting violence. Also, generational views are changing all the time and related to sex, relationships, and privacy. And also physical and emotional impacts of crimes such as sexual assault are often overlooked as normal process, which can also lead to inappropriate referrals and treatment. Older adults tend to be less educated about sex, sexuality, sexual health, STDs, STIs, and HIV or AIDS. Some examples of how social views may impact the experiences of older adult victims of sexual assault are listed here. There may be other experiences or additional experiences, not to take away from the experiences of all individuals who become a victim of crime. But for older adults, there could be an increased severity of injury, lack of supports, added stress on caregivers, decreased transportation abilities, limited access to court information, perhaps an older adult who, due to issues around aging, are not able to get to the courts to speak to Crown attorneys and other such instances. They may have increased vulnerability and need for preventative supports. There may be elder abuse involved. And as I said, an increased need for home supports. So in our experience, many older adult victims of crime may or may not be able to access services outside of their homes. So the Older Victim Services Program is able to provide home visits, hospital visits, court visits, as well as visits in the homes of family members. So in terms of the case study, looking at the case of that 85-year-old woman who, unfortunately, we weren't able to show the video. But some of the things that we would be able to provide are very similar to what Manitoba Justice Victim Services would provide, but with a lens specific to those experiences of the older adult. So connecting with the client for the Protection for Persons in Care office, for example, in an incident where they might be in a care facility and experiencing harm or violence. We could, actually most of our social workers are also protection order designates. So in the incident where the matter does involve elder, we would also be able to help that individual with an application. We can involve family in that process, also including safety planning, the court-based information, provided that charges are laid, and also presentations to the personal care home where the incident may have occurred to educate everyone in that area about that type of crime, what they can do to protect themselves, and to address some of the concerns that may need addressing. So if an older adult were to become victim in the community, we could provide all of the supports that were previously discussed, but we would also be involved in the discharge planning, to take that client potentially from hospital to home. Again, they may not have surviving family and friends who are able to help with that. We can do in-home safety planning with the client, actually walking them through what they would do in certain situations and how they would keep themselves safe. Referrals to relevant programs such as home care, Lifeline, and other possible programs both within and outside of A&O. We could talk to them about the involvement of the police and the role of the courts if relevant. Also assisting again in the application for protection orders, prevention orders, peace bonds, and other protective measures. Internal referrals to decrease isolation, isolation for older adults, well, for anyone actually, but especially for older adults is deadly. So we could also provide internal referrals where there would be no wait list for programs such as Connect and the Senior Center Without Walls program. A referral to our safety aid program, looking at whether they might be vulnerable to things such as falls, maybe looking at some housing support if they're looking at potentially having to move or change location, supports through our elder abuse prevention program, as well as, if needed, a stay in the safe suite if they need immediate shelter for their safety. Then that's definitely a possibility as well. I'll repeat what the other presenters had to say in that nobody does this work by themselves. We don't exist in a bubble, and without the amazing community partnerships through Manitoba Justice, through Clinic, through all of the people that are listed on this page and many, many, many more, we would not be able to provide the types of care and services to adequately meet the needs of all individuals, and for our organization, for people over the age of 55. Thank you to all of these wonderful people and organizations. And as always, we would, as a not-for-profit, we wouldn't be able to do what we do without our funders. So we acknowledge them as well. And thank you to all of you for your interest. And I believe that Benedict is going to open the line up for questions.
That is correct. Thank you so much to the three of you. That was really, really interesting. And we are now actually perfectly on time, 11 on the dot. If anyone has a question for either Amanda, Catherine, or Jara, now is your chance, knowing, of course, that you can also reach out to them individually afterwards if you have need more details. So how to ask questions, you can either type it out in the chat box, or you can also ask it directly right now. I'm just going to make sure that you're all unmuted, so not all at once, but yeah, here you go. Go ahead and ask any questions you may have.
That's it's right here.
All right, so you're on mute, all unmuted right now, or most of you are unmuted. So now is your chance. Well, I'm going to have to remute everyone because there's a bit of background noise. So, okay, let's do it through the chat box. Does anyone have any question to get us started? Don't be shy, it's okay.
Did you guys have any questions?
There we go. We have Scott asking, do you have any advice on encouraging older adult access to the services of sexual assault centers?
I can speak to that a little bit. So we do some training around responding to responding compassionately to sexual assault disclosures. So I don't think any of that would really change around, what someone would need at a different point in their life. It really, for us, often comes down to, just believing them, hearing what they need, being that non-judgmental space, and also talking about how to be a bridge to other services. So you don't need to be a counselor or know everything about a service to just be kind of compassionate and sit with someone in that moment and then talk about, hey, I know this thing exists. Does that sound like something that you're looking for or you would find helpful? And it always seems to go a long way to ask permission to share those things as well. So instead of saying, I think you should go straight to counseling, saying, I did this webinar and I heard about some resources available. Would you like to hear about them? Is it okay if I tell you a little bit about what I know? And then really not having to be a detective or needing to know what is right for them or what they need, but just asking them directly and hearing from them what their hopes are around services, and maybe demystifying a little bit about what it can be like to attend some of those. We're always welcoming people to do intakes over the phone or in person, or to even call us or the SAP line and talk more about what to expect if they come in. You're also welcome to, invite a client to call with you, so we can, I hear that feels scary, starting counseling or accessing a center. Do you want to call together? And, there's lots of ways to be kind of a safe bridge in that way.
I would agree. Definitely listening is huge in supporting anyone. I think that the demystifying is also a really important element. There are a lot of beliefs out there about what happens when you access services. And for an older adult who has potentially been victimized by their sole caregiver, there might be a lot of talking that needs to happen first around how will that person have their needs met if this person winds up being removed from their life, or what are the options out there?
Thank you. Scott, does this answer your question? Wonderful. All right, so anyone else? I have a few of you are self-muted, so good job for that. But remember to unmute yourselves if you want to speak up. And I've got a handful of you that I muted because there was a bit of background noise. But if you want to ask a question, you can click on the little raise your hand icon, and you should be able to get in touch or signify that you want to speak up. All right. It's a lot of information to digest, so we're gonna let you all think on it for a second. Meanwhile, I'll take the time to remind you that if you're interested in learning more about our project, you can go to cnpa.ca. We have a project page that outlines what the project is about, what the outcomes will be, and we have a list of resources that we have added that are all related to increasing access to justice for older adult victims of sexual assault. As I mentioned at the start, there will be a brief survey that will be getting to you by email shortly, so you can let us know about what you liked, what you didn't like, what you would suggest, or if you have some recommendations for future topics or presenters. We're always interested to hear from you. And at the bottom of your screen right now, you should be able to see the different ways that you can connect with CNPA, either directly by email or through social media and through our monthly newsletter. So don't hesitate. That's all I had to announce on my end. So if you have any questions, or presenters, if you have anything else that you wanted to add that you might have skipped during your presentation by fear of running out of time, absolutely go ahead and speak up now. Oh, we have a shy crowd today. All right, so I have a question regarding, you were saying, Catherine, that ANO is the sole Canadian service of its kind?
To the best of my knowledge, yes. Just in the sense that we specialize in working with individuals who are older. So, the other service programs are excellent at providing services to anyone of any age. Just that we focus on working with those individuals who are older and may have more specific, I suppose, needs related to their age, that time in their life when they might need different supports.
Okay. And are you aware of any other province where either initiatives are being launched or there's a conversation happening around creating something similar?
I know that there have been discussions actually about many of our programs and services, and we're always more than happy to partner with different services who might like to begin providing these types of services. But as far as I know, not quite yet. So they would be provided with the same services as people of any age through the wonderful victim service programs in their areas.
Perfect, thank you. All right. Well, I think this might be a case of mulling things over and maybe sending you questions later, where it's we don't have any questions popping up yet. We still have 16 people on the line right now, so know that you still have a few minutes if you want to reach out to our presenters. If not, that is perfectly fine. Your contact information, I believe, all three, is available throughout the slides. And just as a reminder, under materials, you will find the presentation that you saw today, as well as the link to the YouTube video that Catherine was mentioning earlier. So if you want to watch it on your own at your own pace, you can access it all there, and they will also be uploaded to cnpa.ca later on today. If there is no question coming up, I'm going to leave things open until 11:15. And if there are no more questions, I think I will let you all go. I'm sure you all have many things to do. And once again, thank you very much, Jara, Amanda, and Catherine, for your presentation and your involvement. It's been really, really interesting.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, I think we'll let it be for now. Everyone looks like they had their fill for the day. Just know that you can get a hold of me at benedicts.cnpa@gmail.com if you have any questions or wish to be put in touch with anyone over in Manitoba. Thank you all very much. Oh, wait, I think I see something in the chat box. Oh, thank you. Kathy is saying thank you so much to the presenters. Great information. All right, well, I will let all of you go. Thank you so much for your time today, and look forward to hearing some feedback from all of you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you.